Grandmaster Viswanathan Anand participated in a Blitz chess tournament recently and was able to win that with a perfect 9 on 9 score at the age of 54. 54. The opponents he was playing against are some very strong grandmasters well known in the chess community, one of whom was or is a second of Grandmaster Magnus Carlsen. Another one is a former World Junior Champion in the year 2023. And another one is the best player in his particular country. And despite that, she was able to win the tournament at 54, the perfect score of 9 on 9. What else do you want? Let me give you a little bit of a background. So this tournament was held on this island of Corsica. Now Corsica is an island of France. If you see, there is France here on this side, and this is the Corsica island, and you see these red dotted lines. Yeah, so that is where the tournament was played, here in Quenza. And yeah, let's dive into the games. So I've selected two games from the event that I want to show you here. The first one is Anand playing against Laurent Fresnay, very strong grandmaster. I think at one point he even touched 2700 ELO. So he was amongst, the elite grandmasters in chess. Anand is playing with the white pieces. Fresnay Laurent is playing with the black pieces. Anand opens the game with e4. And we have the Madras Tiger playing the Spanish in a French Blitz tournament. Black plays knight f6, going into the Berlin variation, striking at this pawn. If white goes short castle, we reach the famous Berlin endgame after knight e4, d4, knight d6. The bishop is attacked, so white has to take. White regains the pawn, and after knight f5, queen d8, king d8. We have reached the famous Berlin endgame, one of the most richest position in chess in terms of possibilities. Instead, in the game, Anand decides to simply protect this pawn with the move d3. Okay, this is another famous line, often used as a way to not allow black to reach the Berlin endgame. Black plays the move bishop c5, developing the piece. Castle d6. Anand continues his development, knight c3, castle. And now a very interesting idea. Anand plays the move knight a4. The knight hits the bishop. So black decides to counter attack by playing the move knight d4, also hitting this bishop. Anand now decides to gobble this bishop. Black gobbles white's bishop. Now this knight is attacked, but instead of retreating it, Anand decides to attack this knight one more time by playing the move a4. Now if black captures dc5, white will capture this knight and the material is equal, but for white, they have managed to open the a file for the rook. So black doesn't want to allow that. So after a4, he goes knight d4, and after knight d4, he captures d into c5 now. Now there is no open file for the rook, and at the same time, black has two pawns, putting firm control over the center. So after dc5, Anand decides to move the knight and goes knight b5. Black kicks it out with the move a6. The knight drops back to c3. And black plays bishop e6. Now Anand decides it's time to gain some space on the king side and open lines for his rook. So he plays the move f4. Hitting at this pawn and at the same time making sure this rook comes in the game. Black gobbles the pawn, Anand gobbles it. If you see, black has control over this square on d4. Black decides he needs to control the central dark squares. Okay, he needs to gain a firm control over all these dark squares that are there. Okay, because his bishop is anyway helping in controlling the light squares. So black decides to play the move knight d7. The idea is black is going to play f6, put his knight in the middle of the board, and as I told you, just have some solid control over the dark squares. But the drawback of knight d7 is now there is no one to look at this square and this square. So Anand instantly jumps in with the queen. Black plays the move f6 and Anand draws his knight forward, knight to d5. All of this because black's knight moved away from f6 to d7. But still the position is fine, equal. g6, hitting at the queen drops back. Black plays bishop into d5. White recaptures with the pawn. Black plays knight e5. Black has managed to control some of the dark squares in the center. But at the same time, white has been able to gain control over the central light squares. White plays queen e4, centralizing the queen, a very nice move. And black plays the move queen to d6. Now it's always risky to walk into a pin like this, but for the moment white cannot put more pressure on the knight with a move d4 because it would get captured. Okay, and also black may in the future go rook a8 and put pressure on the queen. White plays the move c3. Rook a8, always a good idea to put your rook on the open file. Anand plays the move d4, striking at this knight. Black captures, white captures. Now in this position, black makes a big mistake. He plays the move queen b4. Instead, what he should have done here is he had to go queen b6. The idea of queen b6 is white cannot capture this knight because the queen is pinning the pawn. And now later, black can remove this knight, strike at the queen, and at the same time this queen puts pressure on this b2 pawn. Of course, it's easy for me to say this, but in a game, imagine you're playing this in a game with Viswanathan Anand sitting in front of you. Maybe it's not so easy to find it. But after cd4, black plays the move queen to b4. Now what happens is white gets this important move bishop h6. The thing is, whenever the knight moves, white can capture this rook and this bishop strikes the queen. So black has no time to capture the queen because they'll lose theirs as well. So what to do with this knight? This knight is attacked, this rook is attacked. Black decides to save it with the move rook f7. Now there is nobody to guard this e8 rook. So Anand decides to play the move queen to e3. Now this knight cannot move. If it moves, boom, this rook would be lost. And if this knight cannot move, on the next turn, white is simply going to gobble it. So it looks like black is going to lose a piece, which is the reason why they resigned in this game. And Anand was able to win a very nice game in less than 25 moves. In this game, Viswanathan Anand is playing with the white pieces, and with black is playing Bellassine Bilal, the #1 player of Algeria. Anand opens the game with the move e4. Black plays c5. We have the Sicilian defense on the board. Anand plays knight f3, knight c6, d4, take, and e6. Often what happens is after the move e6, the d6 square gets weakened. So a very typical idea is to play knight b5 and start to fight for it, which is exactly what happens in the game. I'll soon release a chess classic by Capablanca where he's able to control this d6 square, fight for the d6 square, and win a very, very beautiful game. Okay, so don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss out on that game. Don't forget to smash the like button for Anand. Okay, let's go on. So bishop c5, after knight b5, bishop c5. Now you don't want to be tempted to give this check, because what can happen is black can just play king e7. Now this knight is attacked, so you cannot support it. Okay, if you don't have your pieces developed, it's kind of hard to keep this d6 square under your control. You would have to play knight c8, and after rook c8, black is fine. Yes, their king is centralized, but also black is the one who has a slight lead in development. Their king can very quickly escape to safety here. Instead, Anand decides to play bishop f4, getting 3 pieces to stare at this d6 square. Black castles. Anand plays bishop d6, hitting at the queen. The queen goes to e7. Anand plays bishop d6. Black captures it. Now the queen captures the bishop. Queen goes back to d8. Now white has a firm control over this d6 square, but for white, their king is still in the middle of the board and their pieces here are yet to be developed. So black in the meanwhile has some time to kick away this queen from this square and hopefully secure the control over d6 and d5 squares, just because white is a little bit lagging behind in development. Long castle happens. Black decides to first kick this knight with the move a6. The knight drops back to d4. Now black would love to play a move like knight e8 and kick away this queen, but the problem is white is able to capture here and play queen c5. This pawn cannot move, and if this pawn doesn't move, next move white is going to play e5, and basically get a very strong bind along the d file. Okay, with the rook placed on the d file, it's a very beautiful position for white. So instead, in this position, after knight d4, black decides to avoid the exchange with the move knight e7. White plays the move knight f3. I don't know why knight f3 was played. Knight e8 happened, hitting the queen. The queen drops back to g3. Black plays the move b5. This knight has successfully managed to shoo away the queen from here, and now black is gonna develop his bishop along this diagonal. Even though black's position looks a little bit cramped, it's fine for black. So b5 happened. White pushes the pawn to e5, gaining space in the middle of the board, and at the same time control over this square so that the knight can swing over. Black plays bishop b7, developing the piece. White develops. Black pushes f5. This pawn can go forward. It could try to attack this queen a little. So white decides to take en passant. Black captures back with the knight, and you have a very equal position. With the queen on the same side as the king, white decides to try to start some attack by playing the move knight g5. Now this bishop and knight are both staring at this pawn. Black plays queen e8. White drops the queen to h3. Now there is a real threat on this h7 pawn. Black plays the move h6, simply stopping this queen from eyeing h7 and also attacking the knight. The knight has to drop back. The knight goes to e4, captures, and this knight comes to d5, ready to replace the lost knight on f6. White plays the move knight to d6, forking the queen and the bishop, but the queen runs to b8, supports the bishop. White captures, and plays the move bishop e4, putting this bishop on a very nice diagonal where it is aiming at one piece and taking an indirect aim at the other two pieces. Now black gobbles the pawn with the move rook into f2. Yes, it looks like black is up a pawn, but white gets terrific counterplay after the move rook hf1. The game, black played the move rook f1, but here black could go rook f8, trying to protect this rook here. But after rook f2, queen g3, this looks a little bit risky for black, although the engine is somehow able to find a defense, engine somehow finds some miraculous ideas. Black takes, the rook takes back. Black has to get out of the pin, so he plays the move queen to c7, which turns out to be a mistake. The better move here was to go queen to b6. Okay, the idea is, now if white tries to go queen f3, you have a check here hitting this king, and if white takes, you take. Yes, this bishop is looking at this rook, but you are also looking at white's rook, and if the white rook tries to attack your knight, you simply drop back to d5 and say that this rook is not attacked anymore and I've saved my knight. Of course, white can capture this bishop, capture this knight, the pawn will capture, and this is an equal endgame. Yes, black has an extra pawn, but it's gonna fall very soon, like rook d3, rook d5. Black played the move queen c7. Now look how these three pieces are able to create a checkmating threat against this king. So Anand plays the move queen f3 first. Already there is a checkmating threat here. Can you spot it? Okay, so it is to play the move queen f7 check, king h8, and queen f8. So if black goes rook c8, you have boom, back rank checkmate. The bishop controls the square. This doesn't work. So after queen f3, black plays the move queen d6, taking control of the f8 square. But now the queen comes from the other direction. First it goes to f7, king h8, and g6. And with the queen and bishop lining up for a checkmate on h7, there is simply no way for black to stop it. Black could try to defend with knight f6, but here white will even chop off this knight, and on the next move, once again, this threat of queen h7 is there. This was the last round of the tournament. Anand won the game with the perfect 9-on-9 score. Even at the age of 54, Anand has got that killer instinct. It just shows that age is just a number. Vishy Anand keeps proving his class time and time again.